All right. Do you recall what year you were first on Arkansas Week?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had moved back to Arkansas in 1989 and actually worked on a political campaign through the end of 1990. And so I would have come on at the start of 91 when I went back to journalism again. And at that time you had like a regular cast, and so did it at that point almost every week for the next 5.5 years.
And who are some of the regulars you were on with?
Well, Steve Barnes obviously was the host even back then, and then the other regulars were Joan Duffy and Max Brantley. So the three of us were kind of the regulars, and we would usually rotate somebody in a fourth seat in and out every week.
So what was that like your first time going out? What'd you think of the experience?
Oh, I have been a talker since I was a child, as people who have known me my whole life would tell you. So it was pretty easy, and I'd known Steve for so many years, obviously, through journalism, that he made it easy, and the crew there at AETN made it very easy. So it just kind of became part of my life. It's what I did every Friday, is drove over on Friday morning and taped that show for Friday night. Now there were a few breaking events where we actually did live shows. One I remember was the death of the Arkansas Gazette in the fall of 1991, occurred on a Friday. And the first issue of this paper, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, came out on a Saturday. So we actually did a live show on that Friday night to update all of that. But those were obviously incredible years because they included Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign for president, his election as president, and that tumultuous first 4 years as president were the times that I was on.
Sounds like they had a good balance, you know. Max Brantley, obviously liberal, I mean, a good balance of different viewpoints.
Yeah, one of the things that was kind of funny is, part of the Friday night block back in those days was the McLaughlin group. So people would watch Arkansas Week, then they'd watch Washington Week, then they'd watch McLaughlin, and they expected us to kind of be in a McLaughlin type tilt. And Max and Joan naturally leaned a little bit more to the left than I did. I probably played further to the right than I am from time to time for good television, but we would get tickled because Joan would travel the state and she would have hardcore people from more the left side of the spectrum come up and say, "Boy, don't you just hate that Rex Nelson? Don't you just want to punch him?" And I would have people from the more conservative right side of the spectrum come up and say, "Boy, don't you get sick of that Joan Duffy?" What they didn't realize is Joan and I drove together to Conway every week. I would pick her up at her house, so we would get a great kick out of that since we accompanied each other over for the taping every week.
Yeah, people think there's antagonism.
Yeah, we were all journalists just trying to do a job when you got right down to it.
What other stories stick out to you from those years?
Well, again, the election of Bill Clinton. I mean, it may have been the biggest news story in Arkansas history, and so that dominated my early time. Campaigns were a lot shorter right back then. Clinton had a 13-month campaign. He announced on October the 3rd of 1991, standing in front of the old State House, and declared victory on the night of November the 3rd, 1992, standing in front of the old State House in downtown Little Rock. So it was a 13-month campaign, but those were a while, 13 months. And again, I was on almost every week during that period. And then those next few years that I was on during the Clinton first term, all of these big national stories were at their heart Arkansas stories. Arkansas Whitewater, that's an Arkansas story. That was an Arkansas land deal. And so stories that were dominating the national news and that you would see talked about on Washington Week would of course be talked about on Arkansas Week, because at their heart, again, they were Arkansas stories.
Yeah, so many people became ensnared in Whitewater. I was covering a lot of that. And people even not connected, or you might say were adversaries of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times we would have national reporters in town doing stories. Steve Barnes was the New York Times stringer for this area. So, of course, he knew anytime anybody from the Times was in town. So I mentioned we kind of rotated that fourth chair. And during those years, we would rotate a lot of national reporters that you would normally see on Washington Week. They would be with us in the Conway studios and would do Arkansas Week with us during those years.
Wow. What else sticks out to you?
It was just, it was a camaraderie because really the same group of us was there about every week. And so, we were like a big family. I got to know all of the people, behind the scenes, from producers to camera people to the sound people. I still remember Sharon putting on my mic every week, just like it was yesterday. And those people almost all became family. And obviously, I had to give that up in July of '96 because I left my main job, which was political editor here at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and I joined Mike Huckabee the day that he took office, which was July 15th of 1996. As his communications director. So now I was on the other side of the fence. I was the one answering questions from journalists all of a sudden. And so that marked an end of my Arkansas Week period, but very, very fond memories of those 5.5 years.
Yeah, okay. I guess that's what I've got. Anything you can think of? Any thoughts maybe about journalism or, what you see now on TV compared to those days?
I mentioned the fact that, Max and Joan leaned a little further left. I leaned probably a little further right when we were giving our opinion. But at our hearts, again, we were all working journalists. We were not full-time opinion people, which is what you see now so much coming out of Washington and on the national political scenes. We were working journalists. So it wasn't just 30 minutes of opinion every week. It was more 30 minutes of background and analysis. There's a difference between analysis and opinion. And I like to think of Arkansas Week as much more of an analysis show than it was an opinion show.
Yeah, a lot more, I guess, I don't know if I'd say yelling, but
yeah.
But that's kind of politics in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, anything else you want to add?
I can't think of anything else.
Great.
I got one maybe.
Yeah.
Why is a program like Arkansas Week important? Why has it been important to the people of Arkansas for the past 50 years?
I think that an in-depth program like Arkansas Week is so important for those that want to know more than the headlines. I mean, they've gotten the headlines during the week. They know that the governor introduced a new education package. They know that X senator filed Y bill. But they need to get a little deeper. Some people do. And Arkansas Week allows them to do that. The people that are actually out there covering these stories all day, they can get a little deeper and they can say, here are the players. Here's why this is important. Here's why that is important. And here's what we think's going to happen because of the various dynamics. Again, it's 30 minutes of real analysis and digging deeper that you don't get anywhere else.